I'm Allison, 32, and until last month, I was transferring $1,200 monthly to support my parents' comfortable retirement. My software engineering salary covered it, though my own one-bedroom apartment remained modest. We had a system and understanding. Then came that text from Mom, family news to discuss Sunday dinner. Important. That message would append everything I thought I knew about family obligation. When my divorced sister Brittany and her kids entered the equation, suddenly my contribution needed to double. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button if family financial drama sounds familiar. Growing up in our 3-bedroom house in suburban Michigan, money was always a complicated topic. My parents, Margaret and Raymond, weren't poor by any stretch, but their relationship with finances was tenuous at best. Dad worked as a sales manager for an automotive parts company, bringing home a decent paycheck, while Mom taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. On paper, we should have been comfortably middle class. The reality looked different. Credit card debt accumulated like snowdrifts in a Michigan winter. My parents refinanced our modest home 3 times during my childhood. Christmas meant extravagant gifts, followed by tense whispered arguments about money in January. Summer vacations to Florida or Myrtle Beach would appear seemingly out of nowhere, followed by months of Dad stressing about overtime hours. Money is meant to be enjoyed, Allie, Mom would say whenever I questioned a purchase as a teenager. We work hard to give you girls nice things. Those nice things always seemed to flow more freely toward my older sister Brittany. For years my senior, Brittany possessed the kind of natural confidence and beauty that drew attention. Her cheerleading uniforms, dance lessons, and later, her college tuition at a private university never seemed negotiable in our family budget. Meanwhile, I developed a different relationship with money from an early age. I started babysitting at 12, worked at the local grocery store through high school, and applied for every scholarship possible. When acceptance letters arrived senior year, I chose the state university offering me a partial academic scholarship over my dream school. "You've always been our practical one," Dad would say, a comment that stung more than he realized. Through 4 years of college, I juggled classes in computer science with waiting tables and campus tech support jobs. Each semester brought the same anxiety about tuition payments, despite my scholarships. My parents contributed what they could, but it was never predictable. Sometimes they'd send $500, other times, apologetic texts about tight months. Brittany, meanwhile, graduated with a marketing degree, but quickly abandoned any career aspirations when she met Jason, a successful commercial real estate developer. They married in a lavish ceremony that strained my parents' finances yet again. I wore a bridesmaid dress that cost more than my monthly rent while working on my master's degree in software engineering. After graduation, my career trajectory accelerated faster than I'd anticipated. Starting as a junior developer at a financial services company, I quickly proved my value. By 28, I'd advanced to senior software engineer at a respected tech firm, with a salary that finally allowed me to breathe financially. It was around this time that Dad announced his early retirement at 60. The company offered a package, he explained during a Sunday dinner. "Not as much as I'd hoped, but with your mother's teaching pension, we should manage." They didn't manage. 6 months into retirement, the hesitant phone call came. "Allie, sweetie," Mom began, her voice carrying that particular tone that signaled money trouble. "We're having a bit of a shortfall this month. The property taxes were higher than expected, and your father's medication copay increased." That first loan of $800 turned into another request the following month. By the 3rd call, I proposed a system. I would transfer $1,200 monthly to help them maintain their lifestyle. The amount represented roughly 15% of my take-home pay, significant but manageable with careful budgeting. This is temporary, I told myself. Just until they sort out their retirement finances. For years later, the arrangement had calcified into permanent expectation. My monthly contribution funded their country club membership, winter trips to Arizona, and the maintenance of their 4-bedroom house, where only they lived. Meanwhile, I continued renting my 1-bedroom apartment, driving my 8-year-old Honda, and carefully monitoring my 401k contributions. Brittany's life appeared to progress perfectly according to plan. Her husband's business thrived, they built a custom home in an exclusive suburb, and she devoted herself to raising their children, Emma and Jacob, now 10 and 8. Her Instagram documented elaborate birthday parties, family vacations to Europe, and professional photo shoots of her perfectly coordinated family. "Your sister has always known what she wanted," Mom would remark during our weekly phone calls, pride evident in her voice. 2 beautiful children and that gorgeous home. I bit back responses about my own accomplishments, the promotion to lead engineer, the industry award for an accessibility project I'd spearheaded, or the substantial student loans I'd finally paid off. In our family dynamic, career success never quite measured up to the traditional milestones Brittany had achieved. Then, 6 months ago, the carefully curated images on Brittany's social media stopped. Her usual daily posts dwindled to occasional cryptic quotes about strength and new beginnings. During our Sunday dinner, Mom seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked. The silence that followed confirmed something was very wrong. "It's Brittany," Mom finally said, exchanging glances with Dad. "She and Jason are separating. He's been having an affair with someone from his office. The perfect marriage, the dream life, all crumbling." Despite years of feeling overlooked in comparison to my sister, I felt genuine sympathy for her pain. What I couldn't have anticipated was how quickly her crisis would become my financial responsibility. The news of Brittany's divorce sent shockwaves through our family system. Jason had apparently been carrying on an affair with his 26-year-old office manager for nearly a year before Brittany discovered text messages on his phone. The confrontation that followed was explosive, with Jason moving out that same night. "He's trying to hide assets," Mom reported during our next weekly call. "The lawyer says Brittany needs to be careful about what she signs." What became increasingly clear through these conversations was that despite 15 years of marriage to a successful businessman, Brittany had no financial independence whatsoever. She'd never maintained a career after college, had no recent work experience, and had allowed Jason to control all their finances. "She doesn't even know what their mortgage payment is," Mom confided, horror in her voice as though this were an unforeseeable circumstance rather than the result of choices. As weeks passed, my parents' mentions of Brittany's situation grew more frequent and pointed. "Family needs to come together in hard times," Dad remarked during a call in which I'd been discussing a potential vacation I was saving for. "It's such a blessing that you're so stable," Allie, Mom added. "Brittany has the children to think about." The implication hung unspoken. My relative freedom from responsibility somehow obligated me to greater family contribution. I began dreading our weekly calls as they increasingly centered around Brittany's divorce proceedings, her emotional state, and the children's difficulty adjusting. 3 months into the separation, I arrived for our traditional Sunday dinner to find Brittany and the kids already there. Emma and Jacob sat absorbed in their tablets while Brittany nursed a glass of wine at the kitchen island. "Aunt Allie." Jacob looked up briefly before returning to his game. Brittany offered a weak smile. "Hey, sis." She looked thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. Despite our complicated relationship, my heart ached for her evident pain. I gave her a genuine hug before helping Mom finish dinner preparations. Throughout the meal, conversation revolved around the kids' school activities and Brittany's upcoming court date. I noticed my parents exchanging glances several times. That silent communication developed through decades of marriage. Finally, as Mom served coffee and the store-bought cheesecake I'd brought, Dad cleared his throat. "We have some news," he announced, reaching for Mom's hand. "Brittany and the kids are going to be moving in with us for a while." I nodded, having half expected this development. That makes sense while you're getting back on your feet, I said to Brittany. The thing is, Mom continued, her voice taking on the careful tone I recognized from childhood discussions about money, with 3 more people in the house, our expenses will increase significantly. Dad jumped in. Heating, water, groceries for growing kids. It adds up quickly. I waited, sensing the other shoe about to drop. We've worked out the numbers, Dad continued, pulling out a small notebook where he'd jotted figures. We'll need you to increase your monthly contribution. By how much? I asked, already calculating what adjustments I might need to make to my budget. We're thinking $2,400 should cover it, he stated matter-of-factly. Double what you're currently sending. The cheesecake turned to ash in my mouth. Double? An additional $1,200 monthly, with no discussion beforehand, no acknowledgement of the significance of the amount. That would represent nearly a third of my take-home pay. That's a substantial increase, I managed, struggling to keep my voice neutral. Brittany glanced up from her phone. Jason's lawyer is blocking access to our joint accounts. It's completely unfair. I have literally no income right now. What about child support? I asked. That's tied up in the negotiations, she sighed dramatically. It could be months before anything's settled. I noticed she wore designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that still had its tags partially visible. Her nails were freshly manicured. Have you thought about looking for work? The question slipped out before I could stop it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. With what experience? Brittany's voice sharpened. I've been raising children for the past decade while Jason built his business. Besides, childcare costs would eat up anything I could make. Your sister has enough on her plate, Mom interjected. She needs time to get back on her feet. Of course, I murmured, retreating. So we'll expect the new amount starting next month, Dad concluded, as if the matter were settled. Family has to stick together during tough times. I said nothing more about it through dessert and coffee. The conversation shifted to safer topics. Dad's golf game, Mom's book club selection, Emma's upcoming school play. But beneath my calm exterior, anger simmered. Not just at the presumption, but at the familiar dynamic reasserting itself, Brittany's needs automatically outranking mine. The drive home through darkened suburban streets gave me time to process my churning emotions. Memories surfaced of college textbooks I couldn't afford while Brittany received a new car for her birthday. Of working double shifts during holidays while she posted photos from family vacations I couldn't take time off to join. Of the careful budgeting I still maintained while she had apparently never learned to manage money at all. As I parked outside my apartment building, the nicest I could afford while maintaining my retirement contributions and my parents' support, I made no immediate decision. But something had shifted, a crack forming in the foundation of obligation I'd built my adult relationship with my family upon. I just didn't realize yet how quickly that foundation would crumble entirely. The week following that Sunday dinner brought an onslaught of texts and calls from my parents. Each communication layered on additional pressure while attempting to maintain the veneer of normal family interaction. Monday morning, a text from Mom. Found those photos of you and Brittany at the lake when you were little. Such sweet sisters. Always looked out for each other. Tuesday afternoon, a voicemail from Dad, just checking in, pumpkin. Your mother's making lists for Brittany's move-in. Thought you might want to come help this weekend. Family project. Wednesday evening, another text from Mom, Emma asking if Aunt Allie can take her shopping for school clothes soon. Such a special bond you two have. The emotional manipulation was so transparent it would have been comical if it weren't so effective. Each message tugged at different heartstrings, childhood nostalgia, family unity, my genuine affection for my niece and nephew despite the complicated adult dynamics. Meanwhile, Brittany's social media had reactivated with a vengeance. Between inspirational quotes about rising from ashes and finding strength in darkness, she posted thinly veiled references to people who claim to value family but disappear when it counts. The passive-aggressive commentary wasn't subtle. By Thursday, I needed perspective from someone outside the situation. I met my best friend Taylor for drinks after work at our favorite downtown bar. "Let me get this straight," Taylor said after I explained the situation. "You've been subsidizing your parents' retirement for 4 years, and now they expect you to bankroll your sister's divorce recovery too? While she does what exactly?" "Heals, apparently," I replied, stirring my cocktail. Taylor's eyebrows nearly reached her hairline. "And your contribution would be what percentage of your income?" I'd calculated this precisely. "About 32% of my take-home pay." "That's insane, Allie. That's like having a second rent payment." I know. The numbers had been running through my head constantly. If I do this, I'd have to stop my additional 401k contributions. Probably cut back significantly on groceries. Definitely no travel for the foreseeable future. While they maintain their country club membership and Brittany gets her nails done, Taylor's indignation on my behalf felt validating. She says she can't work because of childcare costs. But she can live rent-free with built-in babysitters and expect her sister to fund it all? Taylor shook her head. "This isn't about family support, Allie. This is exploitation." The word landed like a stone in my stomach. Exploitation. Had I been allowing myself to be exploited for years? The thought triggered a cascade of memories. Age 16, giving up summer art camp I'd saved for because Brittany's cheerleading competition in Orlando was the same week and family should be there to support her. Age 20, working double shifts at the campus cafe during finals week because mom called crying that they couldn't make their credit card minimum payment. Age 27, postponing a down payment on a condo because dad needed dental work insurance, wouldn't fully cover. Each individual instance seemed like reasonable family support. Collectively, they formed a pattern I'd been too close to recognize. "Have you talked to Dr. Warner about this?" Taylor asked, referring to my therapist. I shook my head. "Not yet. I have an appointment tomorrow." My session with Dr. Warner the next day provided further clarity. We'd been working together for nearly a year, primarily addressing my anxiety and people-pleasing tendencies. "It sounds like this situation is triggering some deep-seated family dynamics," she observed after I recounted the Sunday dinner bombshell. "It's the same old story. Brittany needs, I provide. And how does that make you feel?" The therapist's classic question unlocked something. Angry, I admitted. Really angry. And then guilty for feeling angry because she's going through something difficult. "You can have compassion for her situation while still maintaining your boundaries," Dr. Warner pointed out. "Those aren't mutually exclusive. But family obligations are reciprocal in healthy relationships," she finished gently. "When was the last time your parents or sister made a sacrifice for your well-being?" I sat with that question, unable to produce a recent example. "Allison, we've talked about your tendency to overfunction for others. This situation is a perfect opportunity to practice the boundary setting we've been discussing." I left the session with homework, draft a budget showing what I could reasonably contribute without compromising my financial security, and script language for communicating my boundaries. That evening, I created spreadsheets analyzing my finances from every angle. Even the most generous scenario I could create, cutting my vacation fund, reducing retirement contributions, eliminating my occasional therapy sessions, left me financially vulnerable if any emergency arose. I was still contemplating these calculations when Sunday arrived again. This time, I drove to my parents' house with knots in my stomach. The scene that greeted me was unexpected. My parents' normally tidy home was in disarray, with boxes stacked in the living room and dining area. "We've started clearing the guest rooms," Mom explained, leading me through the chaos. "Come see what we're doing with the basement. Your father's been working all week on it." I followed her downstairs to find Dad installing drywall partitions in what had previously been his workshop and TV room. "Making a bedroom for Emma down here," he explained proudly. "Brittany and Jacob will take the upstairs guest rooms." Had to dismantle my train set, but family comes first. The renovation was clearly already underway, with new carpeting installed and paint cans waiting against the wall. "This looks extensive," I commented, noting the brand new furniture still wrapped in plastic in the corner. "We want the kids to feel at home," Mom said. "It's been so traumatic for them." "How much is all this costing?" I asked, mental calculations adding up alarmingly. Dad waved dismissively. "We put it on the credit card. The important thing is getting everything ready. Your contribution will help cover it." The presumption stunned me. They had already spent money they didn't have, assuming I would fill the gap. Upstairs, I found Brittany directing the rearrangement of the living room furniture to accommodate what appeared to be a new sectional sofa, still half-wrapped in plastic. The old couch was too small for movie nights with the kids, she explained, not looking up from her phone where she was scrolling through interior design images. Mom agreed we needed something more comfortable. "More expensive, you mean?" I muttered. She glanced up, narrowing her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I backpedaled, not ready for confrontation. "Just seems like a lot of changes all at once." "Well, we're rebuilding our lives here," she snipped. "Some of us don't have the luxury of perfect stability." The dig was deliberate and familiar. My stability had never been luxury. It was the result of careful planning and consistent work. "You can afford it with your big tech salary anyway," she added, turning back to her phone. "It's not like you have kids to support." The comment ignited something in me. Before I could formulate a response, Mom called us for dinner. Throughout the meal, conversation revolved entirely around renovation plans, school registration for Emma and Jacob, and Brittany's upcoming court date. No one asked about my work, my life, or acknowledged that doubling my financial contribution might impact me at all. When Dad casually mentioned plans to upgrade the kitchen appliances while we're at it, I set down my fork. "I need some air," I announced, standing abruptly. No one protested as I grabbed my coat and stepped onto the back porch. The cool evening air filled my lungs as I tried to process the surreal situation. Inside that house, major financial decisions were being made with my money without my input or consent. I didn't return to the dinner table. Instead, I collected my purse, called a brief goodbye, and left earlier than I ever had from a family dinner. Driving aimlessly around the city I'd grown up in, past my old high school, the park where I'd had my first kiss, the library where I'd studied for the SATs, I felt a strange detachment. These landmarks of my life stood unchanged while something fundamental had shifted within me. I wasn't just an accessory to my family's plans. I was a person with my own life, goals, and needs. The revelation wasn't earth-shattering. Any reasonable adult would recognize this truth. But for me, after years of defining my worth through what I could provide to others, it felt revolutionary. By the time I parked outside my apartment building, I had no answers, but the question had crystallized. How much more was I willing to sacrifice for people who took my contributions for granted? The following Wednesday evening, I was decompressing after a particularly challenging day at work. A major project deadline had required me to stay 3 hours late, debugging a stubborn issue in our codebase. I'd just changed into comfortable clothes and settled on my couch with a microwaved dinner when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my parents and Brittany standing in the hallway. My stomach dropped. They had never visited my apartment unannounced before. "Surprise," Mom said with forced cheerfulness when I opened the door. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by." My neighborhood was 15 miles from theirs and not on the way to anywhere they would typically go. This was deliberate. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. My small apartment suddenly felt crowded with 4 adults filling the living room. I noticed Brittany surveying my modest furnishings with poorly concealed judgment. "Nice place," she commented in a tone suggesting the opposite. "Very cozy." Dad settled onto my sofa without being invited. "We've been trying to reach you, Allie. You haven't returned our calls since Sunday." It was true. I'd been avoiding their messages while processing my feelings about the situation. "I've been swamped at work," I explained, gathering takeout containers from my coffee table. "Major project deadline." Well, we need to finalize some arrangements, Mom said, perching beside Dad. Brittany moves in this weekend, and we need to sort out the financial details. So this was an ambush. They'd come to secure my commitment in person, where refusing would be harder. I've been thinking about that, I began carefully. The increase you're asking for is significant. I need to look at my budget and… We've already purchased the furniture, Dad interrupted. And the contractors are finishing the basement bedroom tomorrow. I didn't ask you to do any of that, I pointed out, my voice remaining calm despite my rising pulse. It's for family, Dad stated firmly, as if those 3 words formed an irrefutable argument. Family always comes first. Mom leaned forward, her expression shifting to the one she'd used throughout my childhood when reminding me of perceived obligations. After all we've done for you, Allison. The sacrifices we made for your education, supporting your career choices. My education that I largely paid for myself? The words escaped before I could filter them. The career I built while sending you $1,200 monthly for the past 4 years. A tense silence followed. Brittany, who had been examining my bookshelf, turned with a scoff. Here we go with the martyr routine, she said, rolling her eyes. Some of us had real adult responsibilities while you were playing with computers and living the single life. Marriage and motherhood were your choices, Brittany, I replied evenly. Just like my career was mine. And now my choice is being taken away. Her voice rose. Do you think I wanted to discover my husband was cheating? To have my life implode? To move back in with our parents at 36? Of course not, I softened slightly. I'm sorry you're going through this. But that doesn't automatically make it my financial responsibility. So you'll abandon your sister when she needs you most? Mom interjected, eyes welling with practiced tears. What happened to my sweet girls who always looked out for each other? The emotional manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm questioning why the solution to Brittany's situation involves doubling my financial contribution while she has no plan to support herself. I have children to think about. Brittany snapped. Children with a father who should be paying support, I countered. What's happening with that? The courts take forever, she waved dismissively. And Jason's being difficult. Dad cleared his throat. The point is, this is a temporary situation. Just until Brittany gets back on her feet. How temporary? I asked. What's the timeline here? The 3 of them exchanged glances. Well, Mom hedged, divorce proceedings can take time. And then Brittany will need to think about retraining, perhaps. The job market isn't easy for someone who's been out of the workforce. So we're talking years, I translated flatly. Just a few, Dad confirmed, as if that were a minor detail. And during these few years, what will Brittany contribute? I'll be raising my children, Brittany answered defensively. That's a full-time job. Millions of parents work while raising children, I pointed out. Including single parents. We're not asking for forever, Mom pleaded. Just until things stabilize. I took a deep breath. And what about your finances? Dad, you've got a pension. Mom, you have your teacher's retirement. The house is paid off. Do you actually need my money every month, or has it just become convenient? Their uncomfortable silence told me everything. We've gotten used to a certain lifestyle, Dad finally admitted. A lifestyle I've been subsidizing, I concluded. While living in this cozy apartment and driving an 8-year-old car. Brittany had wandered into my bedroom during this exchange. She emerged holding a pair of designer sunglasses I'd splurged on during a rare shopping trip with Taylor. Nice, she commented. These must have cost a fortune. Seems like someone could cut back on luxury purchases. The invasion of my privacy was the match to the gasoline of my simmering resentment. Put those down, I said quietly. Just looking, she shrugged, not complying. Cute handbag too. Is that real leather? Brittany, I repeated more firmly, put my things down and get out of my bedroom. Oh, sorry, did I touch the sacred possessions you prioritize over family? Her sarcasm dripped like poison. That's enough, Dad interjected, sensing the escalating tension. Let's focus on the matter at hand. Yes, I agreed, turning back to my parents. The matter at hand is that you expect me to significantly increase my financial support with no discussion, no consideration of my situation, and apparently no end date. We've set up the joint account for ease of transfer, Mom said, ignoring my point entirely. Brittany will have access to, for household expenses. This was news to me. Brittany has access to the account I deposit money into? Of course, Mom replied. She'll need to buy groceries, clothes for the children, household items. I already used it for some back-to-school shopping, Brittany added casually. Those North Face backpacks the kids wanted were on sale. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They had already given my sister access to my money without telling me, and she was already spending it. You used my last deposit for shopping? I asked incredulously. Family resources, Dad corrected. That's how we're approaching this. Pooling resources for everyone's benefit. In that moment, something crystallized within me, complete clarity about the unhealthy dynamic I'd been enabling for years. This wasn't family support. It was financial exploitation, dressed up as obligation. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Allie, be reasonable, Mom began. Now, I interrupted, moving to open my front door. We'll discuss this when I'm ready, not when you ambush me in my home. This is ridiculous, Brittany huffed, dropping my sunglasses carelessly on the coffee table. I told you she'd make this all about herself. Brittany, I said, maintaining my composure through sheer will, I'm sorry about your divorce. Truly. But your financial crisis doesn't automatically become my responsibility. Easy for you to say from your selfish, single life, she shot back. Enough. Dad stood, sensing I wouldn't back down. We'll go. But Allison, think about what family means. Really think about it. As they filed out, Mom paused in the doorway. We're just trying to take care of everyone, she said softly. No, I replied, the truth suddenly crystal clear. You're trying to take care of Brittany, using my money as you've always done. The difference is I'm not accepting it anymore. The door closed behind them, and in the sudden silence of my apartment, I felt something unexpected, relief. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had stood my ground against the tidal wave of family expectation. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my sunglasses from where Brittany had dropped them, but my resolve was steadier than it had ever been. After my family left, I spent hours processing the confrontation. I moved between pacing my apartment, angry journaling, and occasional bouts of crying, not from sadness, but from the release of years of pent-up resentment. By midnight, emotional exhaustion had set in, but sleep remained elusive. Around 2 a.m, I opened my laptop and began methodically documenting every financial contribution I'd made to my parents over the past 4 years. The spreadsheet was revealing. Over $57,000 transferred, with minimal acknowledgement and certainly no discussion of repayment. I also calculated what those funds could have done for my own financial security, the down payment on a modest home, substantial retirement savings, or an emergency fund that would provide true peace of mind. The opportunity cost of my family obligation was staggering when laid out in black and white. When morning arrived, I called in sick to work for the first time in over a year. This situation required my full attention. My first call was to Melissa Pearson, the financial advisor I'd consulted occasionally since my promotion 3 years ago. I can fit you in at 11, she offered after I briefly explained the situation. In her sleek downtown office, I laid out the complete picture. My income, expenses, current contributions to my parents, and their expectation of doubling that amount. Melissa's professional demeanor couldn't completely mask her concern. Allison, these contributions represent an unsustainable percentage of your income, especially with no end date specified. I know that logically, I admitted. But family obligation feels different from other financial decisions. I understand, she said, her tone softening. But consider this. By compromising your own financial security to this degree, you're potentially setting yourself up to need similar support in the future. It's the financial equivalent of putting on your own oxygen mask first. We spent the next hour developing a realistic assessment of what I could contribute without jeopardizing my financial health. The number was significantly lower than my current contribution, let alone the doubled amount my parents expected. What about a transition plan? Melissa suggested. Rather than cutting support entirely, you could reduce it gradually over, say, 3 months. That gives everyone time to adjust their expectations and spending. The approach felt both compassionate and firm, a balance I struggled to achieve in family matters. I left with a clear financial roadmap and scheduled a follow-up appointment for the following month. My next call was to Dr. Warner, who squeezed me in for an emergency afternoon session. "You're describing a significant shift in your family dynamic," she observed after I recounted the previous evening's confrontation. "How are you feeling about holding this boundary?" "Terrified," I admitted. "But also relieved? Like I've been carrying this invisible weight for years and only now realized I could set it down." "That weight is the misplaced responsibility for your family's financial choices," she suggested. "What do you anticipate their response will be when you communicate your decision?" We spent the session role-playing difficult conversations, preparing for emotional manipulation tactics, and strengthening my resolve. Dr. Warner reminded me that guilt was an expected response to changing long-established patterns, but not an indication I was making the wrong choice. "Your family will have feelings about your decision," she acknowledged. "Those feelings belong to them, not you. Your responsibility is communicating your boundaries clearly and compassionately, not managing their emotional response." That evening, I discovered an online support group for adult children with financially dependent parents. Reading through the stories of others in similar situations provided both comfort and perspective. Many members shared successful strategies for establishing boundaries while maintaining relationships. One post particularly resonated: supporting family should be a choice made from love, not an obligation extracted through guilt. When it becomes the latter, resentment inevitably follows, poisoning the very relationships you're trying to preserve. This framing helped clarify my path forward. I wanted to support my family from a place of genuine care, not coerced obligation. That meant establishing sustainable boundaries. Over the next 2 days, I prepared meticulously for the conversation with my parents. I gathered financial records, practiced key talking points, and even prepared written materials outlining my decision and the transition plan. I wanted to approach the discussion from a place of clarity and calm, not reactive emotion. When I felt adequately prepared, I called my parents to schedule a meeting. Dad answered, his tone noticeably cool. "We've been waiting to hear from you," he said. "Brittany's already moved her things in." "I'd like to talk through some things in person," I replied, not taking the bait. "Are you and Mom available tomorrow evening?" "I suppose we can make time," he said, the martyred tone so familiar it almost made me smile. "Brittany should be part of this too." "This initial conversation needs to be just with you and Mom," I stated firmly. "It's about the financial arrangement we've had for the past 4 years. He agreed reluctantly, and we set a time for the following evening. Before leaving my apartment for this crucial meeting, I took a moment to center myself. On my coffee table sat the spreadsheets, the transition plan, and notes from my sessions with Dr. Warner. I was prepared logistically. The emotional preparation was harder. I opened my banking app and looked at the joint account where I deposited funds for my parents. The balance showed recent withdrawals. Brittany had indeed been accessing the money. With steady hands, I initiated a transfer of all but $500 to my personal account, then changed the password and recovery information. This wasn't an impulsive act of revenge, but a necessary step to protect my finances while we negotiated new terms. The remaining funds would cover immediate needs until our discussion. As I drove to my parents' house, a strange calm settled over me. For years, I'd operated from a place of obligation and guilt. Today, I was choosing a different path, one that honored both my family ties and my right to financial autonomy. Whatever happened next, I would face it from a place of self-respect rather than self-sacrifice. I arrived at my parents' house exactly at 7, the time we had agreed upon. The familiar driveway now held Brittany's SUV alongside my parents' vehicles, a visual reminder of the changing family dynamic. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my folder of financial documents and approached the front door. Mom answered, her expression a careful neutral. "We're in the living room," she said, forgoing our usual greeting hug. Dad sat in his recliner, hands folded over his stomach in what I recognized as his serious discussion posture. Despite our agreement, Brittany sat on the couch, arms crossed defensively. "I thought we agreed this would be just the three of us," I said, pausing in the doorway. "Whatever you have to say affects me too," Brittany replied before my parents could respond. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's just get started. You've had us waiting for days to hear your decision." I took the armchair opposite him, placing my folder on the coffee table. "I've spent this time consulting with financial professionals and thinking carefully about our arrangement," I began, keeping my voice even. "This isn't a decision I've made lightly." "Professionals?" Mom echoed, sounding offended. "This is a family matter, not a business transaction." "It's both," I countered. "For 4 years, I've contributed $1,200 monthly to support you. That's over $57,000 total." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We never asked for an accounting." "Perhaps that's been part of the problem," I continued. "There's been no transparency about how this money is used or whether it's actually needed." "Are you accusing us of misusing your contributions?" Mom's voice rose slightly. "I'm saying we've never had an honest conversation about it," I clarified. "I agreed to help when Dad retired early, assuming it was necessary for basic expenses. Over time, it's funded country club memberships, vacations, and now, apparently, shopping sprees." I glanced at Brittany. "Don't start with that again," Brittany interjected. "The kids needed school supplies." "North Face backpacks aren't basic school supplies," I pointed out. "But that's not actually the main issue here." I opened my folder and removed the first document, a summary of my financial contributions alongside my parents' known income sources. "Based on Dad's pension, Mom's teacher retirement, and your Social Security benefits, your monthly income should be approximately $4,800, I said, sliding the paper toward them. "Your mortgage is paid off. Your essential expenses shouldn't exceed $3,000 monthly for 2 people. Dad didn't touch the document. "Our finances are none of your business. They became my business when you asked me to fund them," I replied calmly. "Which brings me to my decision." I removed another document, the transition plan I'd prepared with Melissa. "I will not be doubling my contribution. In fact, I'll be phasing out financial support entirely over the next 3 months." The stunned silence that followed was broken by Brittany's derisive laugh. "Well, there it is. When family actually needs you, you bail." "I'm not bailing," I said, maintaining eye contact with my parents rather than engaging with Brittany's provocations. "I'm establishing healthy boundaries after years of one-sided financial support." "Boundaries?" Mom repeated the word as if it were foreign. "We're your parents, Allison. Family doesn't have boundaries." "Healthy families absolutely do," I countered. "And here's mine. For August, I'll contribute $600. For September, $300. By October, the regular contributions will end." Dad's face had flushed deep red. "This is how you repay us for everything we've done?" "For raising you, supporting your education." "I've been repaying you for years," I said softly. "At what point is that debt considered settled?" "You've already changed the account," Mom said suddenly. "I tried to withdraw money for groceries this morning and couldn't access it." I nodded. "I've transferred most of the funds back to my personal account, leaving $500 for immediate needs." I should have been consulted before Brittany was given access. "So you're cutting us off completely?" Brittany's voice rose. "With no warning?" I'm giving you 3 months to adjust, which is more consideration than you gave me when deciding I should double my contribution, I pointed out. And I've already made this month's deposit, which you've partially spent. We can't possibly adjust our lifestyle that quickly, Dad protested. You managed before I started contributing, I reminded him. And you have options I haven't had. You could downsize this 4-bedroom house now that you're empty nesters, for instance. Empty nesters? Brittany gestured wildly around her. I'm living here now, with 2 children. Which brings me to another point, I continued, extracting another document. I've researched local job training programs that specialize in helping parents re-enter the workforce. Several offer childcare during classes. I placed the information on the coffee table. No one moved to take it. I'm trying to be abandoned by my husband, and now my sister is abandoning me too. Brittany's voice broke as she shifted to tears, her standard tactic when confrontation wasn't working. I'm not abandoning you, I said firmly. I'm declining to fund your lifestyle while you make no effort toward independence. Mom stood abruptly. I think you should leave, Allison. You've made your position quite clear. I had anticipated this reaction but still felt a pang at the dismissal. There's one more thing you should know, I said, remaining seated. I've been talking with Uncle Steve. Dad's brother Steve had always been the financial black sheep of the family, criticized for his frugality and practical approach to money. We'd grown closer in recent years through occasional lunches. What does Steve have to do with anything? Dad demanded. He mentioned that you have a substantial retirement account you've never touched, I said. Around $200,000 from your company's matching program. Dad's expression confirmed the truth before he could deny it. Mom looked at him in surprise. Is that true, Raymond? Dad shifted uncomfortably. It's for emergencies only. So you do have adequate retirement savings, I concluded. You've just preferred using my money for daily expenses while preserving your own. The revelation created a moment of fractured unity, with Mom turning a questioning gaze toward Dad. We deserved some comfort in retirement, Dad finally said defensively. After working all those years. At my expense, I added quietly. You make good money, he countered. You could afford it. That wasn't your decision to make, I replied. And it doesn't justify misleading me about your financial need. Mom had sunk back onto the couch, her righteous indignation deflated by this new information. Why didn't you tell me about that account, Raymond? The tension in the room had shifted, no longer uniformly directed at me. I didn't think it mattered, Dad mumbled. It was for our future. While Allison funded our present, Mom finished, a note of shame creeping into her voice. Brittany, sensing the changing dynamic, tried a new approach. Well, regardless of what they did, my situation is genuinely desperate. I really do need help. And I'm willing to help in ways that don't involve indefinite financial support, I said. Job training resources, resume help, childcare research, practical assistance toward independence. That's not what I need right now. It's what you need most, I countered. Jason isn't coming back, Brittany. At some point, you'll need to support yourself and your children. The harsh truth landed heavily in the room. For perhaps the first time, I saw a flicker of real fear beneath my sister's practiced helplessness. Dad had retreated into stony silence, while Mom looked back and forth between her daughters, the family peacekeeper without a clear path to resolution. I should go, I said, gathering my documents. I've laid out the transition plan clearly. The reduced deposits will come on the 1st of each month. After October, any financial support will be specific, discussed in advance, and given at my discretion. So that's it. Dad finally spoke. 32 years of family, and you just decide unilaterally to change everything? Just like you decided unilaterally that I should double my contribution, I pointed out. The difference is I'm giving you notice and a transition period. As I stood to leave, Mom followed me to the door. In the privacy of the entryway, her facade cracked slightly. He didn't tell me about that retirement account, she whispered. All this time I thought we needed your money. Maybe you two need to have an honest conversation about finances, I suggested gently. She nodded slowly. Are you really cutting us off completely after October? I'm ending the automatic monthly payments, I clarified. That doesn't mean I won't help in genuine emergencies or for specific needs we discuss in advance. And Brittany. She needs to stand on her own feet, Mom. Protecting her from that reality isn't helping her. Mom's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so strong, Allie? When I finally realized I deserved the same consideration I've always given everyone else, I answered honestly. The drive home felt different from any other return from my parents' house. Though the conversation had been difficult, I hadn't shouted, cried, or stormed out. I'd stated my position clearly and stood firm despite emotional manipulation. As I pulled into my apartment parking lot, my phone dinged with a text message. Expecting more guilt from my parents or anger from Brittany, I was surprised to see it was from my sister. I don't agree with what you're doing, but maybe you could help me look at those job training programs. For the kids' sake. It wasn't an apology or even an acknowledgement of my position. But it was perhaps the first time in our adult lives that Brittany had approached me as a person who might help her help herself, rather than simply as a resource to be tapped. I texted back a simple, yes, feeling cautiously optimistic that something fundamental had shifted, not just in my own boundaries, but possibly in our family dynamic as well. 2 months passed with remarkable swiftness. August transitioned to September, summer heat giving way to the first crisp hints of fall. As the seasons changed, so too did the landscape of my family relationships, sometimes in unexpected ways. My parents adjusted to the reduced financial support more readily than their initial protests suggested they would. The August deposit of $600 came and went with minimal commentary. By September, when the contribution dropped to $300, Dad had begun consulting with a financial advisor of his own, a step I'd been suggesting for years. He says we should consider downsizing, Mom mentioned during one of our now bi-weekly phone calls. The property taxes and maintenance on this house eat up a lot of our monthly budget. That makes sense, I replied neutrally, resisting the urge to point out I'd made the same suggestion months earlier. There are nice condos in that development near the park. We're looking at those, she admitted. Your father's attached to this house, but he's coming around to the idea. The most surprising development came from Brittany. After our confrontation, I'd expected continued hostility or passive-aggressive jabs. Instead, she had taken me up on my offer to review the job training programs. I've enrolled in the paralegal certification course, she announced during a surprisingly civil coffee meeting in early September. It starts next week. 3 months intensive, then they help with job placement. That's fantastic, I said, genuinely pleased. What made you decide on paralegal work? She shrugged, stirring her latte. I was always good at arguing and finding loopholes. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. And working in a law office seems, I don't know, respectable. Something the kids could be proud of. They'll be proud of you taking this step regardless, I assured her. Jason's finally paying regular child support, she added, not meeting my eyes. The court order came through last week. This explained part of her newfound motivation. The financial reality had finally set in. That must be a relief. It's not as much as I wanted, she admitted. But it covers the basics while I get the certification. Our relationship remained tentative, years of established patterns not easily overcome. But for perhaps the first time since childhood, we were interacting as adults with separate lives rather than as competitors for family resources and approval. My own life had transformed significantly as well. With the burden of family financial support lifting, I'd begun house hunting. My modest one-bedroom apartment had served me well, but at 32, I was ready for a place that was truly mine. This one has great bones, my realtor Shannon said as we toured a 2-bedroom townhouse in a neighborhood I'd long admired. The owner is motivated to sell quickly. Standing in the sunny kitchen with its outdated but functional appliances, I felt a surge of possibility. With a reasonable down payment, Possible now that I wasn't sending large monthly sums to my parents. The mortgage would actually be less than my current rent. I'd want to update some things eventually, I mused, running my hand along the laminate countertop. But it's move-in ready, Shannon pointed out. You could make changes gradually, as your budget allows. The concept of planning home improvements based on my own timeline and preferences rather than around family financial emergencies felt almost decadent. I made an offer that afternoon. In early October, Mom suggested a family lunch. I agreed with some trepidation, unsure what to expect when my 3-month transition plan concluded and the regular payments stopped entirely. We met at a casual restaurant near my parents' house, neutral territory that felt significant. Dad seemed subdued but not hostile, greeting me with a brief hug. Brittany arrived a few minutes late, looking more put together than I'd seen her in months, her hair freshly cut and wearing a professional-looking blazer. Coming from class, she explained, sliding into the booth. We had mock interviews today. The conversation through appetizers remained carefully polite, focusing on safe topics: the unusually warm fall, Emma's school play, Jacob's newfound interest in soccer. As our entrees arrived, Mom cleared her throat. We wanted to have this lunch for a reason, Allie, she began. Your father has something to say. Dad set down his fork, looking uncomfortable but determined. I owe you an apology, he said gruffly. About the retirement account, and other things. I waited, allowing him the space to continue. I wasn't honest about our financial situation, he admitted. We didn't actually need all the money you were sending. Not for necessities, anyway. We got used to the lifestyle, Mom added softly. And it was easier than making hard choices about our spending. I appreciate the acknowledgement, I said carefully. That couldn't have been easy to admit. Dad nodded once, then returned to his meal, emotional disclosure completed in his typically brief fashion. We've listed the house, Mom continued where he'd left off. There's a nice 2-bedroom condo available in that senior-oriented community near the library. Less maintenance, lower costs. That sounds perfect for you, I said, genuinely pleased by their proactive approach. And I've got news too, Brittany interjected, clearly not wanting to be left out of the reconciliation narrative. I've been offered part-time administrative work at the law firm where I'm doing my practicum. Just 15 hours a week for now, but it's something. That's fantastic, I said, noticing the hint of genuine pride in her voice, so different from her usual resentment or entitlement. The kids are adjusting better too, she continued. Emma's making friends at her new school. Jacob's teacher says he's settling in well. As lunch progressed, I realized we were having the first family meal in memory that wasn't underpinned by financial tension or unspoken expectations. The change felt tentative but significant. When the check arrived, Dad reached for it automatically. I've got this, I offered. No, he said firmly. We've taken enough from you. The simple acknowledgement meant more than the amount of the lunch bill ever could. Outside the restaurant, as we prepared to part ways, Mom pulled me aside. Are you happy, Allie? She asked, studying my face. With everything? I considered the question seriously. I'm content, I answered truthfully. I'm buying a townhouse. Did I mention that? You are. Her surprise was genuine. That's wonderful news. The offer was accepted yesterday. I close next month. We should help you move, she offered immediately, then caught herself. If you want us to, that is. The automatic offer of practical rather than financial support represented exactly the kind of healthy family relationship I'd been hoping to build. I'd like that, I said sincerely. As I drove home, I reflected on the remarkable shift in our family dynamic over just a few months. My parents were taking responsibility for their finances. Brittany was taking steps towards self-sufficiency. And I was finally prioritizing my own financial health and future without crushing guilt. The transition hadn't been seamless. There had been tense phone calls, tearful accusations, and passive-aggressive text messages along the way. Old patterns of interaction didn't disappear overnight. But something fundamental had changed when I refused to continue enabling unhealthy dependency. That evening, I sat on my apartment balcony, watching the sunset and contemplating the changes ahead. My phone chimed with an email notification. The mortgage pre-approval for my townhouse purchase was complete. As I looked at the official confirmation of this new chapter in my life, I thought about what I'd say to others facing similar family financial entanglements. The journey from enabler to boundary setter hadn't been easy, but the outcome, healthier relationships and genuine respect, was worth the difficult conversations and temporary discord. Family love, I'd learned, required respect and fairness to thrive, not endless sacrifice from one member. True support meant helping others develop independence, not fostering perpetual dependency. And sometimes, the most loving thing you could do for family was to stop allowing patterns that ultimately harmed everyone involved. What boundaries have you had to set with family members around money? Have you ever had to make tough decisions to protect your financial future? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for building relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage in navigating your own family dynamics.